afternoon, all. So today we are going to discuss about how to build resilient supply chain in the time of uncertainty. I have got a very esteemed and experienced panel with me. I have got Madhur Taneja, who is Chief Marketing Officer at Nayara Energy. Madhur leads retail business, supply and distribution, institutional business and oil marketing support function at Nayara. Next to Madhur, we have Mr. Ajay Mehta, who is Vice President Engineering Technology at Shell India. Ajay serves as Vice President Engineering Technology and Chief Engineer R&D for Shell Group. He is currently based in Bangalore and he also heads up Shell's Technology Center. We have got Andy Mcintosh from Cairn Oil and Gas. Andy represents Cairn Oil and Gas Vedanta Limited as a Chief Commercial Officer with about 25-year experience working in some of the world's leading oil and gas company. We have got Mr. Pankaj Goswami from Oil India Limited. He is Director Operation at Oil India, which is the oldest oil exploration and production company in India and youngest Maharatna. We have got Mr. Parthasarathi Chatterjee, Executive Vice President and Global Head Offshore from L&T. Partha brings about 30 years of experience in energy sector, proven track record in strategic development and implementation in large organization. We have got Mr. Sadamori San, who is Director Energy Market and Security Directorate from IEA. His duty as Director of the Office in Energy Market and Security at IEA started in 2012. Okay. So, to set the context, as we have been hearing and experiencing as oil and gas companies, our energy industry is facing unprecedented changes in the recent years, which is related to global dynamics, changing policies of government. We heard Mr. Prime Minister today morning with more and more thrust coming into renewables, regulations coming into play for clean energy, and also not to forget what COVID has taught us. So what's happening is the oil and gas companies are rebalancing their portfolio by expanding deeper in value chain, essentially going directly into petrochemical or power generation or even into biofuel production, diverse field, or some additional renewable like solar, hydrogen, etc. These changes would mean that our supply chain needs to evolve continuously with not only our own assets, but also the ecosystem of suppliers and buyers, as well as all the manufacturing and logistic assets should become more adaptable to the changing needs of the market. Also, many a times, like in past, we had experience of, let's say, doing only B2B. But now as we go into petrochemical and power generation and those kind of value chain, we have to also start learning B2C aspect of it. So, what happens in Indian context is that, yes, energy demand is growing, energy mix is changing, right? And everyone will thrive to increase or at least maintain their market share. So, as the world transitions to resilient clean energy system, we see role of manufacturing and agile supply chain as a critical success factor, together with research and development effort. What we are going to do in next 40 minutes or so is essentially hear from our diverse panel on what is happening into their industry, right? and what kind of strategies they are adopting in terms of, making the future secure. So, to come with the first point, first question, Mr. Madhur. So, recent historical event, as I mentioned, like COVID-19, pandemic, geopolitical conflicts, and all the things which are happening, has impacted oil and gas supply chain. Considering expanding set of risk and uncertainties, okay, what strategies are crucial for mitigating these impacts?
Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Pleasure to be part of the panel and diverse group. The way this question you're putting up is extremely pertinent, and it is a real and unexpected situations that are emerging, and it's extremely important how do we handle it. COVID, or you talk about the current geopolitical situations which are going through, either way, the situation has been where the supply chains have been challenged. It could be getting into either excess supplies or having shortages. And it's very interesting. When it was COVID, there was demand destruction happening and there was so much of glut. It also led to refinery cuts across country, and it meant losses for oil marketing companies and also the logistic partners. And now when you look at this recent geopolitical issues, wherein already the vessel cost was very high due to the entire IMO MOPOL 2020 rule which is happening, and thereafter now the rates going up, insurance going up. I think there are two challenges and we need to look at both. One is at the macro end, second is the micro end. At the macro end, it's all about how is the refining capability, and when we talk about refining capability, it is about how are we ready to take care of different kinds of crudes and process it and also make different slate of products. And the other end, of course, while you do that, it's also your relationships to be able to secure the crudes and to be able to sell the products in domestic or international markets. That, of course, is extremely important to ensure that the businesses are running in the most optimal manner. And of course, India has risen very beautifully in last 2 years, wherein it has managed this tough situation in the most optimal manner. I think the micro level is equally important. And I like the way what you talk about B2C, and we tend to see largely B2B, but B2C is equally very, very important because the way COVID stuck, it changed the way the market was, especially in Indian context. The cash market became digital. The urban utilization moved to a lot of rural. It also meant that the way customers were looking into various products, for some time, because of demand destruction, they moved from getting into good to have products to must have. And that meant that there has to be a lot of work to be done rather than looking at conventional mechanisms, but at technology driven resilient solutions wherein you have one able to look at product forecasting or a proper forecasting of both looking at the products, how the market would be responding, not only historically, but also looking at various other factors. Second being optimizers, both on the supply side as well as on the product side. And the last one is on the supply chain, because supply chain is not only looking at the coastal, but also looking at the rail, also looking at the road. How do you finally supply to the end customer? So how are your technology pieces from the retail outlet E2E basis talking to our entire supply chain, wherein you are able to optimize and ensure that the products are not going out from your retail outlet, because we have very large retail outlet base, 6,500. So it's very important that you are able to maintain inventories and able to service the customer, while of course all these huge changes are happening. So a lot of technology-based resilient solutions which have to come handy.
So, Mr. Ajay Mehta, you Shell being an international oil company and also now expanding presence in India, and you coming over to India last few years, right? What would be your view?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much, for inviting me to this panel. Delighted to be here. I think about the whole question of the supply chain resilience from the point of view of saying that we are ready for prime time. And what do I mean by that? Within Shell, of course, we've been working through our EPC partners for sourcing things, from the Indian supply chain. But I still think that there has been a shift in mindset that I'm beginning to see finally, beginning to take place, where it's not just about the majors needing to diversify, their whole supply chains. You've seen the devastating impact of not having the supply chain part of the equation sorted with some of the things that we've seen in the wind energy business, for example, right? Some of the pitfalls that we've seen has been because of the weakness of not having established that resilient supply chain. So when we think about this inside a Shell, we are very much focused on building long and lasting and sustaining relationships. I've spent the bulk of my career in the deep water side of the business, and the one thing that made us successful there was establishing these long-term relationships with our suppliers that would withstand all these perturbations in the price of oil, which allowed us to kind of become a dominant player in that business. Now, as you look into the energy transition as it unfolds, the first thing at a headline level for me is the energy transition is not something to be afraid of. It's something that we need to be embracing. It's going to happen with or without Shell. Now, the world is moving at pace, and we need to kind of figure out how is the supply chain going to keep pace with the changes that are going to be required to supply that emerging market. So I think that is kind of one big part that I think it's a mindset shift that needs to happen in terms of understanding the robustness of where we are in terms of our engineering capability and know-how in the country right now. I oftentimes still run into colleagues who will give me anecdotes from 10 years ago. I had this supplier from India and XYZ happened. And then you start asking the second level questions and you quickly realize that the information is very dated. So I think that's what I see as one major shift that needs to happen. And with that, the other part that I also see as an opportunity is one of the things, of course, we have in India plenty of is access to talent. Access to talent is fantastic. But one of the bigger things that I think we're going to have to figure out as an industry is to make sure this talent stays in hard engineering. It's very, very, very easy to get attracted to the bright, shiny kind of objects, around what's going to happen in the world of digitalization. Digital, of course, is going to be the backbone of a lot of things that will happen. But in the absence of hard engineering, I think we're going to lose the plot. So I see that is another opportunity for us to go after in the near term.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. MD. From upstream standpoint, would you like to add?
I think I'd like to support what my colleagues have already said. When we talk about sustainable supply chains, oil and gas clients, the operators, we don't have a great track record in the past. It's boom and bust. We've hammered the service companies when the oil price is low, and then we reciprocate when it's high. The mindset is changing now. It's been driven by a couple of things. None of us would have survived the oil price crash of 16 and 17 if we weren't forced to collaborate. Then we went into COVID. My observation was that the companies that collaborated with their supply chain partners, the term we use in Cairn is partner, not contractor. They're the ones that were most successful. Those that run for the lawyers and the force majeure letters, my observation was they're still battling out in court. They didn't get very far. Personal anecdote here, I came to India in December because this is the powerhouse of digital engineering, growth. Who wouldn't want to live and work in India? From a Cairn perspective, I'll give some examples. We use a very advanced polymer. We inject it into our reservoirs for the non-technical people like me. Inject it in the reservoir. Sorry. Inject it in the reservoir. You inject that into the reservoir, you get more hydrocarbons. You can now get more cash, reinvest. The company that we partnered with 6 years ago, on the back of our first contract, built a plant in India. They're about to expand that plant, and they're now exporting that. They've done that with an Indian partner. They've got the best capital you have It's called people, and that's India's #1 capital. Then we're going to take that polymer as a waste product, because it's essentially a gunky, thick hydrocarbon. Our plan is to burn that and create energy, not rely on the coal-fired from the grid. And then we'll re-inject the CO2 back into our reservoir, full cycle. So sustainable supply chain, we can only do that by working in a collaborative, strategic, and long-term through the cycles. And if there's no sustainability attached to it, it's not going to be effective. So that's what we're concentrating on here, and I just use that as an example. But the other thing, the capability of the supply chain in India is far greater than people think. We've got fantastic engineering, data. I was brought in to encourage more, bring in some new partners. I keep saying, look in our back door, look in our back door. If you don't believe me, walk around here. You don't need to bring in people from Houston. There's some great talent here. So sustainable, look in your back door. It's about as sustainable as you can get.
Thanks, Andy. Pankaj sir, we would like to hear your views as well.
Before taking your question directly, first, just I would like to give being a national oil company, I like to give the national oil company's perspective on the challenges. And as we talk about the challenges in the supply chain, not only there is a challenge in the supply chain, there is a challenge in the demand also from our side. So because the oil that we got at some point of time at 200, 300 meters, now we have to drill up to 6,000 meters. So depth is increasing. And at the same time, when we have discovered that there are multi-stake reservoirs, we are also trying to penetrate all those reservoirs at the same time. So there will be multilateral drilling, which will go beyond 6,000 meters. So demand is changing a lot. So that makes the supply chain challenges more critical for us. So that is why we are mostly dependent on the outside overseas sources for technology and for all the other supplies. And basically, as you talk about any sort of disruption, like the geopolitical issues or the COVID-19 pandemic or any natural calamity or something, the entire value chain got disturbed. So entire supply chains getting disturbed means all the projects are getting delayed. So as I speak today, we have some very critical components given to some prominent players, but still not getting supplied. So these are the various critical points where we are getting stuck at various points. But we know the challenges are plenty, and we have been working hard to manage all those by sort of some of the items getting localized by through Atmanirbhar policy that we have been doing as of now. But all the critical items is very difficult to get. And if you talk about the clean tech, that we are all people are talking about the changes in the energy scenario, the clean tech, if you look at that, from the material resources point of view, or per se the technology point of view, everything is now critically placed in concentrated in some of the countries. It's not over across the world. So that concentration of the critical minerals in some of the countries, making this supply chain more difficult. So as you talk, we need to disperse all these technologies and the material chain available everywhere. But this is not happening. Unfortunately, the advantages in the critical minerals or advantages in the technologies are being considered as the advantages in the political mileage also. So that is why it is not dispersing to everywhere, and the things are getting stuck in the various places. But as of now, as a national company, we have been taking these challenges as an opportunities, and many of the items as of now we have converted to localized sources, and we have been collaborating with many of the industries, many of the suppliers, and we are trying to do some scenario analysis, what comes next and what may happen in our energy scenario if we do like this. All those transition actions are also going parallel, and with this I hope we'll be able to navigate through these challenges That is my view.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Partha, you represent actually other side of the fence, no? I brought a topic about suppliers and buyers, no? Now, from supplier standpoint, like what would be your view to make, basically, what would be your view in terms of the learning, what has been done, right? And, like how we can make it better.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I think sitting at a very strategic location after so many people, the advantage is that most of my views are already shared. But that's okay. That's on a lighter note. But I was coming out from the ministerial session where is it audible? No? Can you give me that? Oh, thanks. So I was telling that I was coming out of the ministerial session with, people were talking about the VUCA world. Resilience is something where we have to know how to accept the new reality and bouncing back from the challenges, disruptions, etc. And one of the German consultancy firm, the Institute of the Future, challenged this world is no more VUCA. They call it another acronym they have evolved with called BANI, B-A-N-I. That means that it is no more volatile, but it's brittle. Brittle means it's unreliable. Tomorrow the energy supply across the continents are unreliable, not volatile. It's not uncertain. We are waiting for another disaster. People are anxious. That is A for BANI. And then comes complex. It's no more cause and effect relation complex. There is no linear relation. It's called non-linear. That is N for BANI. And then it is no more ambiguous. It is incomprehensible. So that is the reality of today's supply chain. But you asked me the specific questions. I come from the service provider side. The service provider side, if you want me to give you the challenges, 4 things come foremost in my head. That is, first is geopolitical risk. Second is economic uncertainty, the way the commodity pricing, then the bubbles are happening. And then climate change. The ESG compliance, particularly scope 3 emissions compliance is becoming very challenging for supply chain management. And then obviously the last one, but not the least, I feel, I can keep on giving the list, but these 4 I think, and the 4th one is the cybersecurity landscape. I think these 4 are something which I can consider that something which we are really in the era of BANI, and we have to make some strategy for making it resilient supply chain. I stop here for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. So, let's shift gear, meaning, like we have heard what happened in the past, right? And Sadamori-san will take advantage of your research, basically to set the ground on my next question, which is, what are the key challenges and opportunities for building and managing resilient supply chain, especially in the time of economical uncertainty? We see higher inflation and all those things, and particularly also in context of energy transition, right? And what your data shows, what is likely to happen in the future.
Thank you. So I'm the only one not from the oil and gas industry in India. So I would like to bring in some different perspectives. So we are the IEA. For someone who do not know about us, the IEA is an international organization focused on the energy security. It started as the oil security organization under the OECD framework. So our members are OECD members. But we are now working much more closely with countries like India, and because India is the source of energy consumption demand growth, the growing much faster than any country. Now, when we talk about this, the energy security or the risks to the supply chains, we did have very difficult years in the past four. So it started with the COVID, trouble with the COVID. Then when the world is about to recover from that, there was this Russia-Ukraine situation disrupting the oil and gas, the supply chains. And we have been always saying that the diversity is a source of security. So diversity in supply sources and also the supply routes, they're crucial. And that was quite obvious when we look at what happened after Russia's invasion. So there was a massive changes in the oil flows around the world. And just like India, importing much more Russian crude with discounts, but that really helped the kind of the smooth supplies of oil, so the market to keep functioning. So I think that was good. And we also saw something similar in the LNG market, natural gas markets. So there is a serious disruptions from Russia to Europe. And what saved that was the massive LNG additional flow from the US to the Europe. But in that process, the European the energy buyers, they bought whatever LNG available. So that led to the massive price spikes for the European LNG prices, and that led to the enormously high Asian LNG prices. And in that context, the countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all those South Asian countries really suffered from that. So I think that from that perspective, I think it continues to be very important to ensure the security of traditional fuel supply, oil and gas. And in particular, we are going to launch the oil India report tomorrow. Terrell will present that tomorrow. But the basically, so that shows that India is the fastest in terms of the additional the oil demand growth, even faster than China in the coming years toward the 2030. So in that respect, it is very important for India to continue working on the traditional supply security of oil and gas. But at the same time, as the previous speakers, there's also the energy transition happening, and we are turning to the cleaner energy systems, and we should not kind of switch the risk of oil and gas supply to other clean energy technologies. And by that, I would like to point to the enormously kind of a geographical concentration of certain critical minerals and clean energy technology sources. So in that respect as well, we need to ensure that the diverse kind of a supply base and the manufacturing centers should be ensured around the world. So I would like to stop here. And,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for including us.
Okay. So today morning we heard the energy minister or petroleum minister telling us about three keywords: affordability, security, and sustainability. Keeping these three words in mind, as well as the lesson learned so far, and what we are hearing, what is likely to happen in the future, what kind of strategies Ajay, Nayara is adopting, right, in terms of securing the future supply chain.
So I think largely where you're coming from is also getting into sustainability, which is renewable space, etc. So clearly, I think from a country perspective where we are very large importer of crude, roughly upwards of 85%, I think it's pertinent to roughly 35 million metric tons of motor spirit is being utilized in the country. And the entire renewable, at least from a 10% blending itself, which is 3.5 million metric ton, means roughly $2 billion of foreign exchange being saved for the country. So it becomes very, very pertinent. And from where you're coming, I think the oil and gas companies are extremely well placed because one, they understand what it takes to make it. Two, they understand how to store it and how to move it because we are geared up for very, very large movement of hydrocarbons. Three, if we also look at it, this needs to be done from a supply chain perspective. If you look at where the entire production of ethanol is going to come from, if it is going to be rice-based, then there are 5 states where the production is happening. it is UP, MP, AP, Karnataka, Maharashtra, which means that the movement from where it is there, and that's largely because of the feedstock and fuel availability, the movement back to either refinery or the depots is extremely important. And I think what needs to be possibly done and evaluated from oil and gas companies, there are two big strategic ways of handling it. One, of course, where your depots are there because you already have utility, land, etc. And if you have the feedstock availability, then you can co-locate and start immediately, thereby bringing in sustainability. Or two, of course, could be how do you bring in aggregator model or mechanism where you are able to bring in entire ethanol and do reverse supply chain, because today what you see is lot of one way is being utilized while you're taking the product, but your ships, your rail, your tank trucks are all coming empty. So how are you able to aggregate, thereby able to bring it back? Also, it would mean that you are able to put up biofuel plants which are larger capacity than the smaller capacity. So overall, from a sustainability perspective, I think oil and gas companies are poised well. They need to play their role, and that could also save a lot of supply cost, which is very important for the country. So I do think that it is an important step, and oil and gas companies are poised well, and we would do see a lot of work happening. So we ourselves, being Nayara Energy, are looking at very seriously and think that it's a great opportunity to be able to fit into this particular puzzle and help the entire chain by ensuring that we are playing our fair part into this issue.
Thank you. Ajay, what would be your perspective?
Yeah, perhaps if I could just build on what you just said, because I think what you're talking about here is connecting the dots between kind of where is the raw material available, where are you going to do the processing, where are you going to build the final product. And I think that's really what I believe why we are ready for prime time. Because one of the terminology that I recently heard that really struck with me is that we seem to be in a mode of getting into the world of molecular kind of flight, so to speak, whereby we are transferring molecules such long distances without actually needing to do so. One phenomenal statistic that I heard recently is that we talk about kind of the EV revolution. Cobalt that goes into making these EV batteries typically travels 160,000 kilometers from the point of its extraction to the point of its deployment and implementation. So as we kind of talk in the Indian context of the energy transition unfolding, we're going to have to rethink how we're going to be building that energy system of the future. If you're going to get into the hydrogen business, if you're going to get into the biofuels business, indeed, if you want to get into EV at scale, then figuring out this piece that Mr. Sadamori also talked about is minerals and materials and extraction. Where is that coming from? And then building that resilient supply chain underneath that to make that happen. So I think those are kind of aspects that actually have to be tied together.
Thanks for adding. Now, upstream also plays a critical role, right? And what kind of strategies are getting adopted by Cairn India?
So if you look at talk about resilience and sustainability, a barrel from our Rajasthan field is very resilient, is very sustainable. It didn't travel in a tanker 2,000 kilometers with associated CO2 emissions, and it's security of supply. So I think the target, I believe India wants is at least 50% indigenous production. A colleague here said that's actually getting harder. We've done, I wouldn't like to call them easier fields, but we've done the ones that were easier to monetize. There's a fantastic potential in deep water in India, but that is a whole different level of capital investment and complexity. But it's not new to upstream. It's well proven, deep water provinces in particularly Brazil, West Africa. A lot of companies know how to do this. The supply chain knows how to do this. FPSOs, I don't have to ask my colleague in Shell how many FPSOs they've got and how they've worked with the partnership. So the technology and the people are there. But the interesting thing is, I've never worked in a project anywhere in the world in the last 20 years where I'm not working with smart Indians, ladies and gents. So one of the things we need to do is actually bring our human capital back, and I think we need the right investments. And the government has been very, very good. We heard that from the Prime Minister this morning. Our own chairman acknowledged that as well. So we've got the know-how to exploit these fields. And the other thing we've got is, even though these new fields are challenging, we have existing infrastructure. So if you look at where, say, the mature provinces, like where I started my career, the North Sea of Aberdeen, we don't build a whole lot of new platforms, but we tie back. So you're monetizing your already existing investments, and you get quick payback, but also you get quick barrels. So for upstream challenge in India is, how do we tap the more challenging fields? But also, how do we use our existing infrastructure, which may need to be more changed towards biomixtures and midstream and downstream. My personal view is we've got all of the tools there, just how we assemble the tools and build it. So we have all the tools.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
What I think that we need to be more agile and adaptive in this case. Like when we talk about the supply chain disruptions in industries like us, definitely some adaptive measures can help. Like as I told earlier, that we are doing some scenario planning for all those disruptions that may happen. Suppose the crude oil price goes up or crude oil price goes down, what will happen? All those scenario planning we usually do to maintain the supply chain continuous and without any challenge or without any disruption. So that is what one we can do. And secondly, the technology absorption part. Like people already mentioned about the digitalization. And the digitalization mostly makes the supply chain visible to everybody. Like we can have a platform where we talk about the next 3 years demand, next 3 years requirement, what we need, or next 3 years projections, what we can show to everyone in the market. Or if it is in the cloud base, then anybody can approach it and everybody can see it and work on it. So that is one way we can make it available, what are the supply chain challenges we have and what we are expecting for the people outside. So that is where we have the advantage of technology. Then at the same time, we are now doing some diversification in terms of not only in terms of supply but also in terms of products. So as I speak today, we are now an integrated oil company, and I am very tempted to speak before you that presently we are creating one biorefinery which will produce ethanol from bamboo. So that is one of its kind, and once it will be producing from next March onwards. So February end we are targeting this to be completed. So once it is completed, the supply chain of this ethanol that is have to be blended, that makes sure for us that we'll be producing ethanol and we'll be blending it to the refineries. So that is one supply chain mechanism that we have established within ourselves, within Oil India and NRL. So that is one thing we have been doing. Then we are also looking for some flexibility in operations. That not only the traditional way of doing, we are looking for some flexibility in operations also. So that is my take on the subject, and I'll stop here. Let others, he can speak.
Sure.
I think next question what you want to ask me is that how do we prepare ourselves, right? And
Sure.
all of you heard more the oil and gas or energy producing companies perspective. So I bring what is that we should do as a service provider to make it resilient supply chain. I think two aspects strategically. One is that how the energy producing companies are thinking for tomorrow and make ourselves ready. So I will give you a couple of examples of that how we are as a service provider making the robust supply chain to make what is upcoming. The second one is that what is present challenges like geopolitical, cybersecurity and other things what we talked about, and which is ongoing because we have not conquered the supply chain challenges which is in progress. So that's more for digitalization, adaptive resilience, operational resilience, making it something which is more capacity planning, making it nearshoring. We are almost in presently in LNG we do almost 70% localization, and that takes care of a good amount of geopolitical risk. So nearshoring is one of the strategic thing, productivity enhancement through automation, digitalization, to have the supply chain visibility so that you can be flexible, adaptive, to take a course correction. And also, I think it is increasingly coming as many of the stock exchange requirements, security authorities requirement is the ESG resilient to be. And for example, as part of scope 1 and scope 2 emission, as a service provider, we are talking about neutrality by 2035 for water and 2040 for carbon. But scope 3 is something which we need to educate our downstream supply chain. So those are the things which are continuously going on for the existing. Even for that matter, financial resilience for the supply chain, how to collaborate with that for hedging risk, for cost leadership, etc. Coming to the strategic part, what is for the next? I think it is very important to understand what we are talking about related to hydrogen. Still, the transportability of the hydrogen is a challenge. So what we are thinking is to make it hydrogen plant modularized. In fact, happy to share that we have done one of the captive use hydrogen modular plants so that we understand the nuances of how to do the modularization. We are presently using it as a blended fuel for our furnace for various manufacturing requirements what we need. Similarly, we are trying to manufacture electrolyzer. So first electrolyzer as a pilot plant is out in December. We have to commercialize so that we understand the nuances. So as a manufacturing hub, as a supply chain provider, how we are gearing up for the tomorrow, that is the strategic resilience to generate. So I think these are the two aspects we are continuously working at. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we spoke about collaboration here, no? Because supply chain is not only what a company owns, no? There are also third parties. So shifting gear for collaboration now, how can oil and gas company foster a culture of collaboration internally as well as externally, no? Which ensures the strategic alignment as you spoke, no? Of course, with your own organization's goal, correct? Particularly in the current situation where inflations are going up, right? And decarbonization efforts are also going up, no? And policies are also getting tighter. Okay. So maybe Madhur, if we can start with you.
So if I can reflect back on it, I think collaboration is very important. Sometimes we get too caught up with compete and not collaborate. And if I can look back at two separate industries, one of course is power generation, wherein there is power producers, then a power distributors, whereas transmission is absolutely agnostic. A producer can sell it to any distributor, and that's a great collaboration which happens. Similarly in telecom, where you see that there are companies which are able to be agnostic of the tower companies, and you are able to put equipment on any tower, thereby reduce your cost of putting up the network as well as be able to add unnecessary capex. I think oil and gas is also doing great job on infrastructure sharing as well as on product sharing. However, we could do more in terms of getting structured, and that could help because any open access would help. There are pipelines, there are depots which can be further utilized. New depots can be set up on third-party free access system. And I think any kind of collaboration on these lines would be extremely useful for the country to be able to use the capex in a most optimal manner, thereby also taking speed to market, wherein the customers would be able to get the benefit of multiple players. So I think there is great work being done in oil and gas, but a more structure would bring that much more access to the customers and speed to market.
Thanks, Madhur. Ajay.
Is there a microphone? Okay, here it goes. Yeah, I think one thing that I think Mr. Partha touched upon this is that there is an acute need to make sure that we are joined at the hip, with the entire supply chain. One of the things that is going to be essential in this next wave is, if you're going to get the capital efficiency that we want, to go after the modularization and replication with a clear sense of purpose. One of the things that's lacking right now in our industry is that we all get enamored with our own particular bespoke engineering solutions. And that does not bode well if you are really trying to kind of do the replication at scale, which is going to be really necessary to build the systems of the future that we need. One of the examples that I can bring here is that, we talk about 3D printing and additive manufacturing and the like, but actually, as a representative of the oil and gas industry, I can tell you that we are actually quite poor in the actual deployment of the advances in these technologies compared to other industry sectors. And one of the missing links there has been lack of collaboration, lack of standardization. So I think those are the arenas in which we are going to have to get our acts together to really unlock the full potential.
Thank you.
If I take an example, particularly for upstream, there's a cross-collaborative initiative under IOGP where a lot of the major upstream oil and gas companies and the suppliers are collaborating to come up with standard specifications for valves, flanges, generators. So it's not if I go back to my start of my career, where I was with BP, we had a very bespoke, Shell had bespoke standards, Exxon's bespoke standards, everyone had their own standards, gold-plated, bells and whistles. We can't afford them anymore. Time to market, we have to build things quicker, capital efficiency, and the only way we do that is through collaboration and initiatives like IOGP, where the whole supply chain, customer and supplier, are working to standardize will really, really help. And I'm glad that we're finally doing it. It only took us about 95 years.
Great.
I will put it like this. Collaboration and partnership is the oxygen for resilient supply chain. So by having collaboration between the suppliers, then the logistic providers, then the companies, then the research groups, there can be a complete synergy of the entire supply chain system, so that there is no delay, there is no disruption in the supply. So that is one thing that I need to elaborate. I think that time is very limited, so we have only 1 minute as it is showing now. So I will not talk about this thing, but collaboration is a must for keeping the supply chain resilient.
Yeah. Mr. Partha, quick word from you.
I think I echo most of the people. I just wanted to say that, the standardization, as Andrew said, we as a service provider again need to not align with the oil and gas companies, and I think capacity planning is something which is very important and challenging, because that is something which alignment is very much required for us to understand what kind of inventory to generate, what kind of capacity, everything downstream has to be that. So that's one part. In our system, service provider, we do something called SESA. That is, simplification, then it is elimination, then standardization, and then automation. Because if you do the automation without previous things, you may do bad things much more faster. So I think that what has taken us here will not take us there. So that looking back, setting a pause and really understanding today's challenge and making a resilient strategy, what we talked about, is important. And that is where I think understanding each other from the value chain perspective is very important. So it's a start, but there is a lot of capacity planning alignment is happening between the service provider and the companies of oil and gas. So it's a happy beginning, I think, but it's a must because the challenges are and it's a loss. So it's to make it win-win, I think both the fraternities will come forward. So I think that's what I should say.
Okay, thank you. So it shows our time is up. We had very interesting and engaging conversation on supply chain. I have picked up few keywords. First, I picked up 3 words in morning, which is affordability, security, and sustainability. Correct? And from our conversation, I'm picking up building long-lasting relationships, because no one organization or no one organization supply chain can be fully independent. Tech understanding and continuous development of the technology, both, let's say, digital as well as physical, no? Right? So in our terminology, physical. Understanding now the customer behavior, right? Because in the current era, the needs of customers are also constantly changing, right? Harvesting talent, because people would be running our business, not us as leader. Recycling as much as waste as possible, and the example what you gave, right? Government ensuring, constant policies rather than constantly changing policies, okay, because which is detrimental to any industrial effort. And Madhur, from your viewpoint, reverse logistic or reverse use of the supplier, logistic asset, so that we do not have, I would say, unused capex, right? So with that, I would like to thank all of you for your time and putting the thoughts together. Also, I would like to thank the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.